Hello and welcome to Who's the Bossk? It's a Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I am your host. I am the lead Southern California reporter and editorial director for Star Wars content at Laughing Place. This is episode 92 of Who's the Bossk. We are recording live on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. Please, if you're here watching live, please comment. We would love to hear from you. This episode, we're going to be discussing the fourth chapter of Star Wars, the Book of Boba Fett, the live-action Disney Plus TV series. The episode is called The Gathering Storm. And for that discussion, I have invited my friend and coworker, Bekah Burbank. Bekah, thank you so much for taking some time out of your week to come chat about Star Wars with us.
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about Book of Boba Fett and everything else.
Awesome. Me too. Also with us, as we're doing every week during this run of Book of Boba Fett episodes, is Rebecca Mosley, who's kind of my right-hand lady, helping out with... I was going to say right-hand cyborg because that's how I keep describing Fennec Shand in my reviews.
I was just going to say I'm the Fennec Shand to your Boba Fett.
Yeah. Exactly. There we go. That'll be next week. I'll try to remember to say that. Rebecca, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'll try not to convince you to off anyone during today's episode.
Please, not me.
That meme of whoever it is in the window, like, do you want me to kill them? So since I've got both of you here, you are both the co-hosts of the Laughing Place YouTube series, Barely Necessities, which is a live Disney merchandise show. Tell me a little bit about that. I know we've talked about it before, but what's been going on Barely Necessities? What has changed since the last time we talked about it? And what's some good stuff that you guys have talked about lately?
Well, let's see. As far as changes, the seasons. So that means so much more Valentine's Day merchandise. And, we're not talking about Christmas and Halloween anymore. There's a lot of Star Wars merchandise because of the Book of Boba Fett and the bonus bounties that they have. So lots of that, but we're still doing our thing. We have several companies that we feature each week, and then Rebecca does her Sensational 7. So you can tell them about that.
Well, it's similar to what I do here. Here I give you 7 selections in the world of Star Wars. I call it the Sandcrawler selections. But over on Barely Necessities, I have to narrow it down. So I feature items inspired by the personalities of the 7 dwarfs. And so that's what we do. We have some fun over there each week, Bekah and I. It's Tuesdays at 4:00, and it's a live discussion. Join in. Let us know what you found that you like. Ask what is out there if you have a favorite character. We do our best to keep you informed on all things Disney merchandise, Marvel, Star Wars, classic Disney. You got it. We love to talk about it. Window shopping extraordinaire.
Yes.
Great. You can find that right here on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. Bekah Burbank, you're also, as we've established, a regular contributor at laughingplace.com. What kind of stuff have you been putting up on the website lately?
Mostly merchandise, and and I do some of the site management, so trying to keep up to date with the guides for like Festival of the Arts, which is going on right now in Walt Disney World, and then I need to put some polishing touches on the Lunar New Year events over at Disneyland. But I'm keeping up with stuff like that. Some news posts, but mostly merchandise, and then some reviews. We've had some products from Entertainment Earth, and I get to talk about those.
Fantastic. You can check all that out at laughingplace.com. And yeah, I'm going to be heading to Disneyland Resort tomorrow as of this recording to check out the Lunar New Year celebration over there. So I'm excited to contribute to that coverage as well. And Bekah, it is your second time on Who's the Bossk. You have answered the 5 Star Wars questions previously, but that means you've graduated to level 2 of the 5 Star Wars questions. You ready for this?
I think so.
Okay. Level 2, the 5 Star Wars questions. Number 1, what is your favorite line of dialogue in a Star Wars movie or television series?
I probably should have gone with TV show, but there's so many, and I was having a hard time narrowing it down. So this time I'm gonna go with "No One's Ever Really Gone," which is what Luke says to Leia at the end of The Last Jedi, and it's just a sweet moment between them. So unless I have that completely wrong, I didn't vet myself here.
No, you got that right. Yeah, it's Luke's kind of force projection talking to Leia at the end of The Last Jedi. I think it was in one of the trailers for that movie too, because I remember people making a big deal about that line when it was spoken in that trailer. So yeah, great choice. Number 2 of the 5 Star Wars questions, level 2. Which Star Wars planet would you like to live on and why?
Well, like you guys, I've already had the chance to spend time on Batu. So I think probably best for me would be something like Coruscant, where you have this like city and there's all sorts of activities and things going on. I think some of these other more like nature specific planets are a little too much for me. So I want to be where there's activity and like you can choose the action that you're going to see each day, whether or not you step outside of your apartment or you stay in.
So they've kind of established now that there's a couple different, much like a real world city, there's different sections of Coruscant where you've got like the parts that are sticking up in the sunlight that are nice and clean and shiny, but then you've also got the lower levels that are like the seedy part of Coruscant. Do you ever think you would venture down into that area?
Yes, but I would have to be with people who were much more comfortable there than I was.
Okay. So you have a guide like
Yes.
Ahsoka Tano to take you down.
Yes.
Mike Mack says that you can catch him and Becca bar hopping on Coruscant. That I would like to see.
Perfect.
You could go to that bar where the guy wants to sell you death sticks.
Yes, exactly.
That's funny. I was thinking Doobie and I would be doing the double deck bus tour.
Okay.
That's how we roll.
Number 3 of the 5 Star Wars questions, level 2. What's your favorite era in the Star Wars storytelling timeline and why? So I always like to go through the examples here. I'm going to do this as quick as I can. Got the Old Republic, thousands of years before the original trilogy. The High Republic is a couple hundred years before the original trilogy. Then you've got the prequel trilogy. You've got between the prequels and the original trilogy called the Reign of the Empire. Then you've got the original trilogy era. Then you've got the New Republic era, which is Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, some other stuff that's coming out. Then you've got the sequel trilogy era. And I also like to include the Legends timeline, which is all those old books and comics that used to take place after Return of the Jedi and sprinkled a little bit throughout the timeline. But of those, what do you tend to prefer and why?
I'm going to go with Age of Rebellion, and mostly because the reason I like Star Wars is because of the Skywalkers and the original trilogy. And I don't know if I came to the franchise now when there's so many options. I don't know that I would be as excited about Star Wars as I am. So I really like living in that time period with those characters. So that's probably where I would most, or that's my favorite story time.
So you're saying if you came to it now, you wouldn't be as into it. Is that because it's too like diluted? You wouldn't know where to put your focus?
I think I wouldn't know where to put my focus. And
Okay.
I mean, like, there's so much that I enjoy, and everything that we've experienced, like everything that I've consumed so far that's branched out of the original trilogy, I've enjoyed. But I feel like there's almost too much homework to do with Star
Yeah.
Wars at times. And so I think it would be so intimidating if I hadn't already started. And so that's where I'm most comfortable.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And whenever I have a friend who has a child, I always ask them like if they're going to expose their kids to Star Wars and like where they're going to start. Are they going to start in episode 1 or do you start at episode 4 or you let them kind of discover it on their own? That's always because I'm not planning on having children. It's like I always wonder how people are going to handle that. So it's a good it's an interesting question to me. But number 4, which Star Wars creature would you have as a pet?
I like those monkey lizards. However,
Yeah,
how do you say it? Kodaki or
Kowakian.
Kowakian. I think,
Yeah.
especially if I'm going to be living on Coruscant, I think that would be something that I'd be able to like easily manage in a smaller home. I don't need, all the space. Like I thought, oh, a wampa might be fun, but you can't keep a wampa in an apartment. Like you need to live in a cold climate, right? Like
Becca's so practical.
They always said Salacious Crumb, the Kowakian monkey lizard in Return of the Jedi, it was the court jester of Jabba's palace. But I had to wonder, like, what is he actually doing to entertain Jabba the Hutt as the court jester? Because he just seems like he sits there and then like gets hypnotized by Jabba's tail wagging back and forth or whatever. I don't know. What do you think he's good at comedy like that we didn't see off screen or whatever?
Yeah, maybe there's some comedy, or maybe he's like acrobatic. Like he might be really
Yeah.
acrobatic. Puts on a little bit of a show. They get the music going, and then he like flies around or something, or like, you know.
I believe that.
One of our teammates, Mike Mack, has chimed in with his hope that Bekah will provide our readers with a caring for your wampa. So there you go, Bekah. Something to work on in the. Oh, I love it.
I love it. You got to feed it a tauntaun a day.
I know, right? Yeah, like the food budget for the wampa would be ridiculous.
Forget the R2D2 Tamagotchi. Apparently, we needed to have had a wampa for Bekah. You have a wampa in her pocket.
Yes.
So we got a question from our friend Nick Morgan, who asked, in The Last Jedi, was Finn submersed in a bacta tank? Which is a reference to a trivia contest that he wrote for me. It was the Stump Mike C Star Wars trivia contest, and this came up and was a bit of a point of contention. So no, he wasn't in a bacta tank. He was in a plastic bacta suit. I will concede that it was not a tank. So you got that, Nick. You're correct on that one. So number 5 of the 5 Star Wars questions, level 2. What filmmaker or author would you like to see create a Star Wars story? So pretend you're Kathleen Kennedy, president of Lucasfilm. You can invite any creative person to your office to have a meeting to pitch a Star Wars story. Who would you bring in to talk about that?
So this had started out as like a joke answer, and then the more I was thinking in my head, how would this person work, the more I liked it, and I'm like, now I want to see it happen. I think Star Wars is missing a little bit of comedy, and Wes Anderson has a very specific style. I think he could do a one-off somewhere, I don't know, something with like Yoda. Yoda's this like stoic character, right? And that's kind of Wes's specialty, or this like stoic comedy. So I think his take on what Yoda was doing as he was, I guess he would have to be in his early hundreds or something, right? Might be interesting. And we don't know much about those characters, so it's kind of, or those creatures, right? So there's kind of, you have a lot of room to play. I like to think that Yoda's actually like the funny one amongst his people, his tribe, and like, he'd be the one who's a little bit more rambunctious than everybody else.
I love this idea. I'm a big Wes Anderson fan. We just rewatched The French Dispatch, which is his latest film. I love this. I think it would be great. I'm not sure if Wes Anderson would want to do it.
I know.
Or even if he was allowed to do it, if he would be allowed to like use his own style, because it seems like they want most of the Star Wars filmmakers to kind of conform to this established Star Wars look or whatever, with a little bit of variation here and there. But I think it would be a wonderful experiment. And yeah, as Mike Mack said in the comments, that would mean we'd get Bill Murray in Star Wars, which would be fantastic. And then Tony Betty says the Life Aquatic with Boss Nass, which is great. Or the Grand Tatooine Hotel. I like it. Okay, that's going to bring us to the end of the 5 Star Wars questions for this week. And we are going to move on to Star Wars headlines. And last week we took a look at some new Book of Boba Fett character posters, and we got a few more this week. Of course, as we talked about in the last episode, Danny Trejo has now joined the Star Wars universe, and now his character, the Rancor Keeper, I don't think he has a name other than that yet, but he did get his own Star Wars, the Book of Boba Fett poster that you can see there. You probably can't see it if you're just listening to this episode, but you can go and find it on the official Star Wars website or on laughingplace.com. Stephen Root, who we talked about last week, also got a poster, which is great. He's the watermonger from that episode. And then the characters that we now know as the mods, are represented. There's two of them, the guy with the cyborg eye and then the lady with the cyborg arm. What do you guys think of these posters? Anything jump out to you?
Nothing in particular is jumping out at me, but I do like that like orangey swirl around them. How about that?
I like it. Yeah. Yeah, very cool. I like that they're doing this. I wonder if they're actually printing them out though. They're probably just putting them together for the website and probably not printing the full size version of this poster, because I'm sure certain characters would sell pretty well if they were to make them available, but
Yes.
I don't know if that's going to show up on Barely Necessities anytime soon.
Do you believe that these recent ones, the Rancor Keeper and the Watermonger, do you guys think that this is more indicative of the stature of the guest stars or of their a hint at maybe a continued appearance in the series?
Well, I think they did both. I was thinking back to The Mandalorian, and they did. So if somebody was a recurring guest star, they got a poster, and then they've also done some for characters that only had one episode. So I think it could go either way. I was actually wondering who's going to get a poster for this week's episode, because there weren't any big guest stars. I think only the mod scientist guy, the tattoo parlor mod parlor guy who fixed up Fennec Shand is the only like significant guest role in this week's episode. So that would be my guess of who we might get a poster for this week.
Wow.
Unless they decide to go with like the Bantha or something.
The Bantha would be cool.
Just like hanging out there.
I would like to see the Bantha have a poster. Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Up next, we've got some actual news about this Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga video game. Now, 3 years ago, I went to the E3 Expo, the Electronic Entertainment Expo. It's not called the E3 Expo. That's redundant. But you get what I'm talking about. It was at the LA Convention Center. They show off new video games coming up, and I saw a preview. It was like a 20-minute preview of this video game. It looked pretty cool. I was excited for it, and then it kept getting delayed over and over again. I know, Rebecca Mosley, you've been very excited for this game, and you keep getting disappointed that it gets pushed back. And now we have a date. They've actually said April 5th this game is coming out, and they released this new like 6-minute gameplay trailer. What are your thoughts of based on what they showed, and do you think this is actually coming out this time?
I'm hoping it's coming out this time. I'm not gonna like bank on it yet, but what really excited me in the trailer that we had was not only is there the expected like first person experience, like Princess Leia in the corridor against the stormtroopers, or Jedi walking through Tatooine, but you also can pick among like 300 characters. They said even a gonk droid. You can be a gonk droid. You can fly the Millennium Falcon. You can visit all sorts of different planets: Tatooine, Geonosis, Camino. I mean, all these different worlds you can, and then kind of in addition to the story that you can follow, you can kind of branch off and do things that you equate with that area. For example, Tatooine, you can go after some womp rats. You can end up confronting the Dianoga, and even step into moments in time, like who shot first, Han or Greedo. So I'm super excited about this April 5th, but I'm scared it's going to end up being October or
right.
Or so I'm hopeful.
That may be a prophetic slip that you had there, and it may get delayed to October. But there was a very brief clip of the player playing as Jabba the Hutt running around the city, and that made me literally laugh out loud. And I was like, I can't wait to just play that part. I mean, I'm sure he's going to be like an unlockable character later on in the game or whatever, but I just want to play through until I get Jabba the Hutt and then just run around causing mayhem. What about you, Bekah, Burbank? Is this something that are you a gamer at all? Would you play this game?
This seems like a game that, yes, I would play, but I'm very much like, I need something that's simplistic and, I love being in those computer worlds, but I'm so not good at it. But yeah, I would enjoy this. And it's Lego, and Lego is always fun. So
yeah, I agree. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Lego's like the top of my gaming ability. I'm a side scroller, except for the Lego games, and I slowly work my way through. I made it all the way through the Jurassic Park, collection that they did, that Jurassic World collection, and I'm currently working my way through Lego City. But yeah, so I say, Bekah, dive in. It's
Okay.
you'll love it. You'll love it.
Yeah, these Lego games are always fun for sure, and I really hope that this comes out in April and I get to play it and review it for laughingplace.com. So just well, a couple months until we find out if that's going to happen for real. And up next, I did write a couple new book reviews for laughingplace.com. One was for a new High Republic book. This is a young adult book in Wave 3 of Phase 1 of the High Republic. It's called Midnight Horizon by Daniel Jose Older, and I was kind of mixed about this book. I honestly have gone back and forth about my opinion on Daniel Jose Older's writing style. It hasn't always gelled with me 100%. He has some little, I guess he tends to write in a very modern vernacular. I think that takes
Okay.
me a little bit out of the Star Wars galaxy here and there. So that bugs me a little bit. But I also have an issue with the way he writes the Jedi characters, because I think they're very. It almost kind of makes me feel like they're from another franchise, or like Harry Potter, or they're going to Hogwarts or something, because they're all very, a lot of his characters are the younger Padawans and stuff, and they're all very like chummy and flirty with each other, and it just doesn't feel like Jedi. I don't know. Does that
Sure.
make sense to you?
Yes. No, it definitely does.
I think he's definitely written stuff that I liked, but this one I was kind of on the fence about, so I can't really give it like a glowing recommendation. There were parts of it that I liked. It all takes place on Corellia, or mostly on Corellia. We get to see the Grindelid species again, which is those weird worm monsters from Solo, a Star Wars story. So those guys pop up in this book, which I thought was really neat to kind of see them a couple hundred years earlier. But yeah, mostly I thought it was just okay. I would say if you haven't dived into the High Republic yet, the adult targeted books are the best ones so far, and a couple of the other young adult books I did enjoy, but this one I thought was just kind of so. Bekah, Burbank, do you know much about the High Republic? Have you looked into that at all?
I picked up The Light of the Jedi,
Okay.
and I did not finish it. That's nothing because
Yeah.
it was I borrowed it from the library, so a very short time frame, had to return it, and I just haven't picked it back up yet. But I enjoyed what I was reading. I was surprised at how many like deaths there were.
Yeah.
And so I was like, in that story, like, who do I get, who do I get attached to? And like, but I liked the premise of it, at least the, first like third that I read. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I keep saying about the High Republic is there's so many characters, but I kind of am starting to get why they did that, because they have killed off a bunch of them. So that problem has been alleviated as the story has gone on.
okay, that's good.
But yeah, I am enjoying that for the most part overall. I think there's hits and misses within that series, but definitely looking forward to seeing where it goes from there. I also reviewed a book called Star Wars Inner Jedi. There you go. Oh, I can show it, or you can show it. Either way, it's a guided journal for training in the light side of the Force. There's not a lot to read here, but I actually did find it pretty helpful, because I've been trying to like do some meditation type exercises and stuff, and this is a great way to do it kind of through the lens of your favorite pop culture franchise, if that happens to be Star Wars. So it gives you a little quote on every. So it's a year-long exercise, and each week gives you a little quote from Star Wars, and you have like a little comparison to a character from the franchise, and then it gives you a little prompt to write your own entries about how you're practicing kind of the ways of the Jedi, or light side of the Force. And there's also activities like coloring and stuff like that, basically things to help you calm down, or just kind of do a little bit of like meditative practices. It's nothing that I probably would have bought on my own, but it's neat to have, and I think there are definitely people who would appreciate something like this. There was also a book that came out, I think last year or the year before, written by our friend Amy Ratcliffe, called Star Wars: The Jedi mind, and that was kind of a similar idea, to use the teachings of the Jedi as part of these like meditative practices. So that's kind of a trend that's happening, and I think it's a kind of a neat way to use this pop culture touchstone to help guide people through something like that. What do you guys think?
Rebecca and I have talked about, well, with Disney merchandise, how stuff has, suddenly become available in the past couple of years. I think this is a really neat idea because when I was growing up, we didn't have Star Wars journals like this. There were toys, there was merchandise, but not anything that you could, apply to your daily life. So I like that they're doing that.
Yeah, I was going to say, growing up, it was like you kind of had your serious side of life and then your frivolous side. You almost felt like it was like either serious or frivolous. But yet we would draw on sports stories as inspiration or whatever. And I always found that frustrating because I wasn't very, very athletic myself. But yet to my mindset, it wasn't that different in many ways, because it's like it's about as frivolous in some ways as a movie or a TV or whatever. But yet these were great inspirational stories. So I'm glad to see people kind of drawing from those into ways to make your life better in more tangible ways, not purely the fact that it's entertaining. I like it. It's a nice trend, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, and that book is from Insight Editions, and you can find it on Amazon, or you can follow the link from laughingplace.com, my review there, and that'll help us out a little bit too. Let's talk about some comic reviews for this week. Comic books that came out from Lucasfilm Publishing and Marvel Comics. We got Dr. Aphra number 18. I'm kind of on the fence about this run, this arc of this series as well, because the villain currently in Dr. Aphra is a fake Sith. It's somebody who dresses up like a Sith, pretends to be a Sith, and is using fake force powers. And it turns out that they have basically been using like magnetic fields to pretend to use the force, which is kind of a neat idea, and I get what they're going for, but at the same time, I'm wondering, like, if this is possible in the Star Wars universe to fake having force powers, it seems like everybody would be doing it. Does that make sense?
Yes. It sounds kind of like Mysterio, not to cross franchises, but using right. Technology to
yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's one of those things that I'm like, okay, it's kind of neat for this story, but I'm not sure it makes sense in the larger world of Star Wars. It feels like one of those things that if people knew about this, I mean, maybe it never gets out that this person was doing that, but yeah, this is a character that Dr. Aphra had apparently gone to university with and had a falling out with, and now they're basically a villain seeking out these ancient artifacts that can help them pretend to have force powers. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I like Dr. Aphra because she's an archaeologist, and through her we get to learn more about the history of the Star Wars galaxy, and I always like that aspect of Star Wars. So I am looking forward to reading more about this ancient cult called the Ascendant. These are the cult that had invented this technology, and I have a feeling they're going to touch on this in the High Republic, because they keep talking about how long ago it was, and the High Republic is about to rewind time another 150 years. So I think those things are going to tie together if I had to predict. So I'm intrigued by this idea, and I want to find out more about it. Otherwise, I thought this issue was pretty good, not great. There have been some arcs of Dr. Aphra that I've really loved in the past. I think we're getting there. I think we're getting back to that. The High Republic number 13 from Marvel. This was fantastic. Kevin Scott is so great, a writer. This was a really action heavy issue, and I'm usually not into that kind of thing. It like flew by. I feel like I read this in like less than 5 minutes. It was nothing, but it was great and really exciting. And basically, Avar Kriss is the marshal, the lead Jedi of the Starlight Beacon space station, and she's gone out to the Nile base. The Nile are the villains of the High Republic, and she's gone out to their base to capture the woman that they think is the leader, but she's not actually the leader of the Nile. And the Jedi get there, and Avar Kriss kind of loses control. She starts to slip. a little bit of hints of the dark side here in this battle against the Nile at their base. And yeah, I just love the writing. It's very crisp, efficient writing, I would say. And the illustrations are really wonderful and evocative. I love the main High Republic comic by Kevin Scott. I always highly recommend that series. And this issue is no exception. Then we get to the last comic of the week, which surprised me. This is called The High Republic Adventures Galactic Bake Off Spectacular. And when this first got announced, it was one of those things where all the toxic fanboys were making fun of it because they're like, oh, you know, Star Wars is dead. Look at this. They're doing comics about bake-offs and stuff. And I admit that I had a similar reaction. I was like, this sounds very silly. It sounds like one of those things that's going to make me roll my eyes and groan and stuff. But I actually enjoyed it quite a bit because the bake-off is really just the bookends. And it's really just an excuse for them to tell this story because the recipe that they're baking, first of all, they're making these treats to be prizes for this thing called the Jedi Rumble Race or something, which is also a little bit silly. But the recipe calls for them to tell a story while they're baking it. And it's really just an excuse for them to, again, tell the story and have a flashback to the beginning of the High Republic timeline as we know it so far with the Great Disaster. And it tells another story that takes place back during Wave 1 of the High Republic with some characters where we didn't know quite what they were up to during that time. So it's filling in a little bit of a gap in that way. And I really liked the flashback segment. Just thought that was really great storytelling. They do this thing in this issue that I've seen in some other comics where the flashbacks are drawn by a different artist. So you have cool. a different art style in the present day and in the flashbacks. And it really helps delineate the difference between the two. But the flashback story is really compelling. It's about two of the Jedi Masters going and trying to evacuate this starship that's basically like a retirement community for elderly Jedi. Which is so interesting to me because I always wondered, like, you know, you see Yoda grows up to be 900 years old and he's still acting as a Jedi Master, teaching Luke Skywalker and stuff. But I guess there are older Jedi who aren't quite all there anymore that need to be taken care of in that way. And they have like this meditative ship that they can stay on. It has like cool gardens and stuff that they can hang out in. And this is all about that ship getting damaged in this thing called the Great Disaster, which is part of that book that you read, Bekah, The Light of the Jedi. And the Jedi Masters have to evacuate all these elderly Jedi from that ship. And I found that story really touching and moving, and I thought it was really interesting. So kind of ignore the whole bake-off aspect of it. But this is also written by Daniel Jose Older, who I talked about earlier. So again, I kind of go back and forth on his writing. I think that he has written some really good stuff, and he's really written some stuff that hasn't connected with me, but I think he is capable of delivering a really good Star Wars story. Bekah, I haven't asked you this yet, but maybe I asked you in a previous episode, but are you into the comics at all? Have you read any Star Wars comics?
I have not. Okay. Maybe a stray one I've picked up here or there, but I'm definitely not following any of the current titles. But
okay. Yeah, I think if I had to recommend two, I would say the main Star Wars comic, just called Star Wars by Charles Soule, and then the main High Republic comic called Star Wars: The High Republic by Kevin Scott. Those two are the ones that stick out to me as being, obviously they're the two flagship titles right now. So it makes sense that they would put their best writers on those. And I think they're really, really great. And then that's going to bring us to Rebecca Mosley's segment for the Star Wars headlines part of the show called the Sandcrawler Selections, where we talk about some of the merchandise coming out of all the different licensees from Lucasfilm and the Bring Home the Bounty collection. What do you got this week? And I'm sure Bekah Burbank might have some input on this since you guys have probably touched on it already.
Yeah, some of these items are going to be familiar if you watch us over during our Tuesday Barely Necessities. But for this week's Sandcrawler Selections, I'm going to start off with some of the items that were part of the bonus bounties this week. And among those, Mike, was this stunning collectible from Gentle Giant. It is a Boba Fett on his throne there. Nice detail of his armor and the throne. So that's available, a limited edition from Gentle Giant. Over at Amazon, you can get a sweatshirt, t-shirt, tank, anything featuring Danny Trejo's Rancor Keeper.
I think it was funny that Kyle Burbank pointed out on our Slack that they used the Doom font.
It looks,
on
yes.
that shirt.
Yes.
Very much. And the mods are featured on a Book of Boba Fett sweatshirt. You've even got their multicolored Tatooine style Vespas featured as well. I don't know what they're called. I'm going with Tatooine Vespas for now.
They look like Vespas. They really do.
No, they're the Moss Vespas. Have you not heard? Moss Vespa.
There we go.
I love it.
My husband wants to know if they've released a "Don't Touch My Buttons" shirt yet, and I regret to inform you that has not yet popped up. But
yeah, that's the one that I want. It's just got like Tamura Morrison's face, like looking grumpy, and it says "Don't touch my buttons." That's all I want.
In the meantime, you can pick up a t-shirt with this. Really, Becca and I were talking about this. Is quite the retro, like flashback 80s. Is that where we went, Becca, when we were talking about it?
That's what jumped out to me. Very like 80s vibes.
Yeah, the Book of Boba Fett and that flashback 80s down at the bottom. And then you've got a Bantha, the stormtrooper on pikes, and Boba Fett sitting atop in his Tusken attire. From Hot Topic is a comic t-shirt. Well, it's a shirt that features like the comic book art from the 70s, 80s. Boba Fett, a few of the classic. Yes?
I have that comic book framed on my wall next to me.
That's awesome.
Mike Celestino, once again, reaching off to the side and pulling in. Oh, that's epic. That's the best. So there you have it. That's comic number 10, apparently. Oh,
that's so cool.
And continuing with a little bit more of a back look at the classics, a New Hope illustration tee from Heroes and Villains. Stunning black, just simple sketch, black and white sketch of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Old Ben, Luke, Princess Leia in her A New Hope hair rings, and Darth Vader. So just a nice look back at kind of where it all began. And finally, Mike, maybe you could use this in your home bar. It is a Landspeeder punch bowl. But if you're not, the punch bowl type, perhaps you would just enjoy little shots out of the R2-D2 and Luke Skywalker tiki shot glasses. So,
yes.
So there you go.
It's very cool. I don't have room for it, and I think my wife would kill me if I bought it.
How about you, Becca? Gonna find its way into the Burbank house.
It's gonna find its way to my mom's inbox, and then she will get it for me for birthday, anniversary, something like that. Like I just need to tell her, hey, look, this is pretty cool, and then she'll get that for me.
And Mike, last week we talked, this is actually kind of a +1 because last week we talked about the phase blaster and
pulse rifle.
Thank you.
Oh, phase pulse blaster, they call it here. Sorry.
No worries. They actually delayed its release. It seems like there may have been a small batch that hit shelves because I do see some for sale on certain secondary market kind of things. But over at the Hasbro Pulse site, I see that it's listed as arriving, shipping in March of this year. So if you were concerned that you had missed your opportunity, head over to Hasbro Pulse or Entertainment Earth, and you can still own a Nerf Mandalorian rifle.
I will say that I just got a box from Hasbro a couple days ago, and I was really hoping that was going to be in it of stuff that I'm going to be reviewing on the YouTube channel, but that is not among them, unfortunately. Okay, that's going to bring us to the end of Star Wars headlines for this week and to our main topic, which is the Book of Boba Fett Chapter 4. The Gathering Storm. And we have not talked to Bekah Burbank about this show yet, so I'm going to ask her, what were your expectations going into this series, the Book of Boba Fett, and how have you felt so far about the previous 3 episodes, not including this week's?
Not including this week's. That's a good point. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I know I liked The Mandalorian, and I thought, considering they teased that at the end of Book of Boba Fett at the end of Mando season 2, I figured it would probably be a similar vibe as far as like you kind of have a little bit of a, I don't know, heist of the week type thing going on, and it's a little bit slower and more laid back, not so action heavy. So which that so far met my expectations. I didn't think this would be told as much through flashbacks, but
Right.
I really, really like those. And I thought the first and second episode were really good. Didn't so much care for the third one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. 3 has been my least favorite so far, and the second one's probably been my favorite, I think, of the 4 that have been released so far. Episode 4, The Gathering Storm, was directed by a gentleman named Kevin Tancharoen, who I hadn't heard the name before when that popped up in the credits. Had you guys heard of this guy before?
I've
No.
not, no.
Yeah, me neither. So he directed the Fame remake, the musical Fame, Fame. He also directed the Mortal Kombat Rebirth live action TV series and some episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and a bunch of other TV shows. It was written by Jon Favreau, as has been every episode of this series so far. What did you guys think of The Gathering Storm? Bekah first.
This is just a little bit below episode 2 for me. This was very, very intriguing, and I was, it had my attention the entire time.
Yeah,
How about you, Rebecca?
I would rank it similarly. Just below. Well, no, for me it would be. I was not a big fan of the first one, so it would be like 2, 1, this one, and then 4 maybe, and then the last one 3. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same order: 2, 1, 4, 3. I think if I had to make the list, I did enjoy this episode. I still have that same complaint that I keep telling you, which is I want a little bit more variety in the locations. I really love that about Star Wars, that we're always going someplace new, and we keep going back to the it's always the sanctuary, casino, and the palace, and then the desert and the streets of Mos Espa and stuff like that. I just want them to go, I don't know, go to Beggar's Canyon if you can't leave Tatooine. I don't think we've ever seen Beggar's Canyon in live action, but there's other parts of that planet to explore. I think it would be cool. Or even if they went to like Mos Pelgo, which we've seen in The Mandalorian, but just vary it up a little bit. That's really my big complaint, I think. Otherwise, I did really enjoy this episode. I don't know this guy, Kevin Tancharoen, but he seems like a very capable director. Yeah. So let's go through the episode kind of sequentially, starting. It basically starts right off on the flashbacks, because the first shot is, once again, Boba Fett in the Bacta tank or pod or whatever we want to call it. And as soon as you see that, that's the device to tell you, oh, it's going to be a flashback right off the bat. And Boba's riding his bantha through the desert, and he goes up to Jabba's palace, and he's looking at the location that I immediately recognized from the Star Wars Battlefront video game, which is the garage in Jabba's palace, which we've never seen in anything but that video game before. So I thought that was very funny. What do you guys think of the beginning of this episode?
Well, is he planning to infiltrate on his own? Because that's really gutsy and maybe a little overconfident, but yeah, I was like, wow, good for you, Boba, for believing that you can do this on your own.
Right, because he says like, oh, not today, there's too many guards.
Right.
I mean, unless he had something like, a smoke bomb or something in there to like knock everybody out so he could get in. But
yeah, I just picture him like he's going back there every morning, like checking to see how many guards are out in front of the garage at Jabba's palace. So they have this little campfire scene, which is a recurring theme in this episode, with him and the bantha. I love the bantha's tongue looking at, I think he's eating a sand bat I think that's the creature that he's eating there, and the bantha licks its lips, and Boba Fett throws part of the meat into the mouth of the bantha there. Kind of this touching relationship. There's a shot, like an insert shot of the bantha's tail wagging,
Yes.
which I thought was very funny.
It was so cute. It gave a bit more personality to the bantha.
Yeah.
I didn't think of them as being kind of puppy-esque.
Right. Well, I knew they had built this full-size bantha for The Mandalorian last season for the Marshall episode, the season premiere. So I'm guessing this is the exact same one. Like, well, we built a bantha, plus we have 2 series coming up that are going to be on Tatooine between Boba Fett and Obi-Wan Kenobi. So just keep this bantha around, and we'll. But I have to wonder how they're doing it, because it used to be, I'm pretty sure it was elephants in the first movie, but I don't think they're doing that anymore. I don't think they're putting them on elephants. I wonder if there's people under there, or how they're manipulating this bantha puppet. What do you think? What would be your guess?
I would think puppet, like they did with
Yeah.
Jabba the Hutt, and
Yeah.
this bantha reminds me a little bit of Snuffleupagus with the way
Yes.
the mouth moves.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
So I'm like, there's got it. That I don't know.
Yeah, total Snuffleupagus. And it also reminded me, Mike, weren't there rumors when Batuu was being developed that this was going to be something that, you know, we were going to get to experience as guests? Wasn't there rumors that there would be bantha rides as part of?
Yeah, not specifically a bantha, but they did describe it as a bantha type creature, a beast of burden that would walk around. Actually, the path is there. If you go to the park, you can see the path that it would walk, because there's like kind of a loop on both sides that where it would turn around, and then it would board in the area that's called the Black Spire Station, which is where the land speeders are parked. But in the book, The Art of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, I think it was that the concept artist, what's his name? Doug Chiang. I blanked on it for a second. Doug Chiang was talking about that because he did a lot of the concept art for Galaxy's Edge. And he said that the reason that wasn't able to go forward was because it was such a low capacity attraction. You'd only be able to fit a few people at a time on that creature, and the line would just be forever long. So unfortunately, that I guess it didn't end up panning out. That would have been really cool, and it would have added, as you always say, a little bit more of kinetic energy to Galaxy's Edge. So then in this episode, the Book of Boba Fett kind of overlaps with The Mandalorian a little bit, because the title character sees those flares go up in the air that we saw in the Mandalorian episode called The Gunslinger in season 1, where Din Djarin and Toro Calican are riding through the desert on those speeders and pursuing Fennec Shand. It reminded me a little bit of Lost, because we've talked about Lost a bunch, Rebecca, and there's always those episodes that like overlapped with each other, and you get a different perspective of something that had happened previously on the show. So I really liked that. And then we get to the point where Boba Fett meets Fennec Shand. Now, I have to ask you, Rebecca Mosley, because you've brought this up several times, about being disappointed by your headcanon not being true.
Okay.
Now, have you told me what your headcanon was for this yet? I don't think you have.
No, I've never told you my headcanon. Okay,
Can you?
Yeah, no, totally. So here's the deal. I'm perplexed as to why Boba Fett would care that Fennec Shand is dying in the desert. And so my thought process before everything was that she was, for some reason, she had to hide and was taken in by the same Tuskens that had taken in Boba Fett. And so my theory was that they had bonded with her being that warrior Tusken that we saw him constantly going toe to toe with.
Oh, yeah.
And so my thought was that they had somehow bonded that way. And then she was helping, and so she was kind of doing some recon for him now in her, for some reason she was back as Fennec Shand, right? Doing some recon with him, trying to help him get his gear. And that's how she got shot. And since they had this bond, that's why he, so that was the whole headcanon that I had crafted based on the fact that the warrior that he was going toe to toe with was a little bit smaller than him. We knew that she was a female stunt person, so it was, so these kinds of things, like I say, I had pieced that together. And more importantly, I was just like, why would Boba Fett care that Fennec Shand is dying in the desert? And I'm still not sure I really understand, other than he really wants his ship back, and he knows that she'll help, and there's some sort of code if you save her, and she'll at least not kill you before. Because I don't understand saving an assassin. That just doesn't compute.
Well, what he says in this episode is that she's got a big bounty on her, and then she says that she's worth more alive, and he agrees with that. I don't know how true that is.
But he doesn't seem to be very protective. Like what's to stop her from just, I don't know. That was my thing, was just like, he seems to be rather chummy with somebody who's just assassin.
I think they kind of painted themselves into a corner by setting all that up, and then they had to come up with a reason, and it was just kind of like, well, what's the quickest, easiest thing that we could come up with? But he does take her to this, what he calls a mod parlor, which is where these mod teens or young adults hang out and get upgraded with cybernetic parts and stuff. And there have been, we've talked about this last week or whatever. What did you guys think of this location, Bekah, Burbank? What do you think of these characters and this? It's almost kind of like a tattoo parlor, but you get like cyborg implants and stuff. What do you think of all this?
It feels a little out of place to me, but I wrote down that I thought the concept art was probably, or the pitch was probably cooler than the actual scene.
Oh gosh, that's a recurring theme in these discussions.
But and I noted that I thought it was unnecessary for the story, but I do like that they took the time to show him, putting the, I guess, mod pieces inside her abdomen. And I like that this show is taking the time with stuff like that. I wouldn't want to see it much more outside of this, but
yeah, and it's definitely something we've seen before in Star Wars. Empire Strikes Back, Luke gets his hand replaced, and it's all supposed to be like, oh, he's becoming a little bit like his father, who's more machine now than man, and stuff like that. So this just happens to be this gang, this like trend among these young people on Tatooine who want to do it like intentionally, have parts of their body removed and replaced with droid parts or whatever. It's something that we haven't seen. Well, it's a spin on something that we have seen before, not in this context. So I think that is interesting in itself, and I'm looking forward to seeing if they go into that a little bit more, or if we find out more about that subculture on Tatooine. So then we get,
Mike, before you move on, there were two aspects of this particular scene that kind of jumped out to me. And that was that, as you're talking about Luke, the focus of those scenes was on the humanity. To me, it was like you saw a kind of a glimpse of the cybernetics, the mechanics, but then all the focus of the scene was on his hand responding. And that was a very human element. Whereas here, the focus was very much on the machine element. And then the other thing that I never had thought about before was a lot of the imagery we have with Star Wars is the red and blue saber. And I never really thought of the fact that when we think of like the human heart, the blood system, circulatory system, it's red and blue. And you really do need both. But they have to be in proper balance in order for you to survive. And because of the way that imagery was in this particular scene, it really jumped out to me in that way, which it's never jumped out to me that way before.
Yeah, that's a great observation, and something that I had not occurred to me. But yes, we see the tubes in her innards.
Yep.
And the liquids that are flowing through them. One of them is blue, which I just thought was Bacta, and then the red one I just thought was blood. So maybe, I mean, even if that's the case, the fact that blue has been associated with good and red has been associated with evil. Yeah, I think that's a really wonderful observation. And then that guy, the artist or whatever, the person installing the cyborg parts, has that line where Boba Fett asks if he's gonna cover up or seal her back up, and he says, well, why would I cover up all that beautiful machinery? So Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It adds a little bit of nuance to this whole idea that, life or organic is good and inorganic is bad or whatever. There is like a happy medium there too. So we get to what I would call the heist sequence of this movie, which is Boba Fett and Fennec Shand breaking into Jabba's garage to steal the Slave One. And I thought this was my favorite part. This is the most exciting sequence to me, especially that part with the droid chefs. I thought that felt very Star Wars to me in a way that we hadn't seen before. Had some great humor mixed with some great action. What do you guys think of this sequence?
I mean, I thought the whole chef thing was a little silly, but I like your take on it. And yeah, it does have that Star Wars feel to it for sure. And again, like I like that they're taking the time to show these things instead of just like, hey, we have a scene outside and then the next thing you know, here comes the ship. You don't have any, there's a process to it. And I like that we're spending time with that.
Absolutely. Rebecca?
I enjoy when Star Wars is a bit corny. I enjoy it, and this was one of those moments where it leans into its roots of that Saturday movie serial kind of elements, and I enjoyed it.
It just reminded me very much of some kind of humor that we would see in either Return of the Jedi or some of the prequel stuff. Especially the little I think it's called the LEP droid running around like going through the
rat catcher.
Yeah, the rat catcher droid. He's going through the ducts or whatever and stuff. I just thought that was very funny. I just really enjoyed that part. I don't know. But they get the ship out. Then Boba Fett says he's going to take care of settle some old scores. They go and they just blow up the biker gang. So this is another running thread of this show that's just been eliminated. They just blow them like from the sky. They just shoot them with the Slave One and the proton torpedo and everything. So they're not an issue anymore. And then they head over to the Sarlacc pit. I have to ask you about this scene because when my wife and I were watching this episode, they turn the Slave One sideways and they pull it over the mouth of the Sarlacc pit and they like start to go. Well, first of all, he like covers the mouth with the cockpit of the ship. And then he says like, oh, now I can't see anything. It was like, yeah, you just blocked out the suns.
Yeah.
What do you think was going to happen?
You have two suns and you blocked them out. Well done.
And then the tentacles come up and grab the ship. And all I'm thinking is like, this is pretty dumb, guys. What do you think? What was the plan here? And I loved somebody pointed out that on Twitter, I saw somebody made the joke that in Return of the Jedi, Lando Calrissian gets grabbed by one of those tentacles and he's able to hold on to just loose sand and not get pulled in. And yet it's pulling that entire Slave One ship down into the Sarlacc pit. What did you guys think of this scene?
My initial thought was that I'm like, is he seriously going to take revenge on the Sarlacc pit? Like, he just knocked out that entire like biker gang and now he's just like, here you go. Yeah, I thought the Sarlacc pit was super strong, like way stronger than it should be for being a creature that lives in the sand.
And Justin Smith asked if Boba didn't remember that the Jawas stripped his armor off after he escaped. I was thinking that too, but then I remembered he was kind of unconscious when that happened before the Tusken Raiders came and picked him up. So I kind of understand that. But yeah, when he crawled out of the pit, he was still wearing his armor. I guess maybe he thought the Tuskens had taken off his armor and just threw it back in the pit. I don't know. Is that the only thing that makes sense?
I just think it was an irrational move. I'm voting for it. It was just irrational from beginning to end.
I like that they had the sail barge there as well to show that, like, even after a couple of years, nobody's coming to clean this stuff up because why?
Right.
And then, that the way they get away that's one of my favorite sounds in all of Star Wars. It's my favorite sequence on the Star Tours ride is that like seismic charge. I was so happy to see that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. And I know somebody was saying that they had predicted that part of the show would be Boba Fett getting revenge on the Sarlacc pit. So now he's
Well, there,
killed it. Well, Fennec Shand actually pressed the button. Don't press my buttons. But but yeah, it was cool to see the Sarlacc taken out by the seismic charge. And the other thing that struck me about that, the visuals of that sequence, is the size comparison between Jabba's sail barge and the Slave One. Because in my head, the sail barge should be way bigger. But then I was thinking about it and I was like, it kind of makes sense that they would be close to the same size, because this behind me is to scale to the 3 3/4 inch action figures. And then somewhere I have the Slave One, which is just a little bit, maybe 2/3 of the size of this thing. So I think they got that about right. I'm sure they thought about it, but in my head, Jabba's sail barge is always this huge, huge thing, and the Slave One would have been smaller. So it didn't look right to me until I thought about it. So I appreciated that once I got it right in my mind, I guess. And then the flashback sequence pretty much ends with Boba Fett and Fennec Shand joining forces and talking about how they're going to form the Gotra, or basically this crime syndicate, take over from Bib Fortuna and stuff. Another conversation around a campfire. What did you guys think of this part?
I feel like Boba's so different than what I thought he would be, because for all those years we'd only ever seen him as like this bounty hunter guy. So there's kind of like a diplomatic approach. I mean, like, he definitely isn't operating with the best of intentions, but he, I don't know. I like that he's more of that like ground level thinking things through, not just going to go in guns blazing. He's, I don't know.
Yeah, and David Murto a couple weeks ago talked about how he kind of has to think about Boba Fett as a different character from the original trilogy, which I think is a very astute observation. And I think I do think that we are supposed to kind of think of him as a different person because of the things that he's gone through. And I think that I am starting to see the arc of who he was to who he becomes, because especially from this conversation where he talks about, they actually go into what it's like being a bounty hunter and putting your life at risk for these people who maybe don't know what's best for even them. And these guys who are out in the field and maybe, could possibly die on these missions or bounties that they're going after, they might have better information to make judgment calls than somebody like Jabba the Hutt, who's just sitting in his palace and isn't actually doing any of the legwork or whatever. So the connections are there. I think I'm starting to see those links between the way we knew Boba Fett to be and the way he is in the present day of the show. Rebecca Mosley, do you agree?
Definitely. I mean, when you find yourself being slowly digested, it may cause you to reevaluate your life choices.
Right.
And kind of think about how you ended up there. And I think the fact that he ended up being adopted by this family in a way, maybe really helped a transformation, that might have started already within the Sarlacc pit, but then you have this, he had a sense of belonging, clearly, which he had lacked from, the moment his father had been offed in front of him. So yeah, I'm totally enjoying this kind of evolution, but it is hard because we came into this with the expectation that we were going to see that non-speaking, has to be reminded not to obliterate people, figure that we had known from Empire.
Right. Doobie says, as you find yourself being slowly digested, it may cause you to reevaluate your life choices. Is a great quote. And I totally agree.
And I'm still trying to figure out kind of how, Fennec Shand did intimate in this episode that he might have been in there years, right? I thought there was a throwaway line that gave me the impression that she made some comment about how the armor has saved you. And then she made another remark, and it gave me the impression that we weren't just looking at a couple of hours, or a day or two, that there was a significant passage, a surprisingly significant passage of time.
I don't
before.
remember that. I've seen the episode twice. I don't remember that line, but I
Okay,
know.
I have to find it because I meant to write it down and I didn't actually get back to watch it a second time to look specifically for it because it threw me because it made me question how long he's been in there.
There is a line that Boba Fett has where he says, "This is where, I don't know, this is where I lost my armor all those years ago," or whatever.
Okay.
So maybe, I don't know if that's what you're remembering, but that's, I think that's just to tell us how much time has passed since
Yeah, totally.
he crawled out of the Sarlacc pit. Again, there could be another line that I'm not remembering, but
No, I'm probably conflating it with her comment about the armor. But
okay.
I still am. I'm trying to piece all the timeline together. I'm terrible at that. But
okay, so cool. That brings us back to the present, as it were. I think we're at this point 5 or 6 years after Return of the Jedi, where Boba Fett is finally finishing his back to treatment. He comes out of the pod and the droid says he's done. Congratulations. And they talk about whether they're getting information out of the mayor's major domo that they captured in the last episode. And Boba Fett says he needs to show his face around town because he's starting to look weak, I think. And he goes to the sanctuary, the casino, where the Wookiee bounty hunter Black Chrysanthemum is hanging out. I also really enjoyed this scene. This is probably my second favorite part of the episode, just because I love Wookiees. I love this character, Chrysanthemum. He's so imposing and scary and yet funny at the same time. And I love Trandoshans. Obviously, I named my podcast after one. And this whole relationship between those two species gets played out here in that confrontation. What did you think of this casino scene, Bekah, Burbank?
So, if you'll clarify for me, that is a species issue between okay, because
this is a running thing.
Like watching, even though you have all of that hair on his face, you can still see he's like getting upset as he's watching them, win at whatever casino game they're playing. I liked being I liked depicting that side of the of, I guess, the Star Wars universe, because I haven't seen that a lot. Yeah, it was a funny scene. But yeah, I had no idea about, I had to take context clues here and realize that, okay, so they are enemies just by nature.
Yeah, the Wookiees and the Trandoshans are like arch nemesis, because the Trandoshans basically will bring Wookiees to their home planet to hunt them for sport, and will take their pelts.
Yeah.
Like, if you go back to I think it's the first episode of the Book of Boba Fett, the Trandoshan mob boss guy comes in to talk to Boba Fett, and he presents him with a Wookiee pelt as a gift. So that's kind of like a little bit of foreshadowing there. But yeah, there's a lot of history between those two species, and obviously Chrysanthemum is not the kindest or more forgiving of the Wookiees. I don't think Chewbacca might have been able to let it slide a little bit before Chrysanthemum did. So Justin Smith says he ripped his arm out of his socket. Yes, definitely a reference to that line from the original Star Wars. And then Rebecca pointed out to me that it's also kind of a nod to the cantina scene where there's Ponda Baba's arm gets sliced off by the lightsaber, and then Han later on pays the bartender and says sorry about the mess, but here it's Chrysanthemum that says that gives her the credits and walks out.
So what I've learned is that if I'm ever a tourist on Tatooine and I visit a cantina and I don't end up seeing an arm just laying on the ground separated from a body, I have missed out on what it is to go to a Tatooine cantina.
Also, you can dismember somebody as long as you pay the proprietor.
That's true.
Make sure you pay for the mess.
Garsa Fwip, the character played by Jennifer Beals, has this nice long monologue where she tries to talk Chrysanthemum down, and it doesn't quite work. And then we go back to Jabba's. Oh no! First, Boba Fett enlists Chrysanthemum, so he's on the team now. He's joined the tribe, Boba Fett's tribe that he's putting together. And then we get the Godfather meeting of the 5 families scene.
Finally.
Yes. each and every week as we've been watching this show, Rebecca's been waiting for that scene to come up because it was in the first trailer. And there was a comment that I think got a little misinterpreted by Robert Rodriguez that most of what was in the trailers was in the first episode. But yeah, I think we finally have seen everything that's been in the trailers, if I'm not mistaken. The final 3 episodes will be all new footage, so I think that's pretty exciting. And I think my other like little minor complaint about this episode is that it ends on this scene where Boba Fett and Fennec Shand basically say we have to prepare for war against the Pikes again, which is exactly where we ended last week. So there's not a ton of forward momentum in this week's episode. You know, I mean, they did recruit Black Chrysanthemum, but they could have done that in the last episode. Instead, they like let him run off into the city.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I had thought that as we were leading up to the end of the episode last week, I figured that's what it was going to be. Like, do you want a job? I need, need some muscle. And yeah, so it's just interesting, delayed it a week.
Right.
But to argue kind of a little bit of the other side on it, they knew that the mayor had already kind of shown his cards as to be part of the Pike Brigade or, mounting effort. And I think it was important that they kind of shore up or at least know where the other houses stood around them, right there on Tatooine, kind of in their own backyard, who's for us, who's against us. And and so, to settle that out, now to do it so like in just a meal, that was a bit surprising. I wouldn't have expected it to be that simple, but at least now we kind of know we seemingly know who the players are, what side they're lining up on before this next chapter where they kind of shore up the defense.
Yeah, and I think the real action is going to kick in episode 5. At least I'm kind of hoping that it does. And like I said in my review, I do kind of think maybe they could have tightened the series up and done 6 episodes instead of 7. I think maybe that's just going to be where I land on my overall opinion of this season. But
you didn't mention the most important part of that scene, though. Them on the balcony.
Well, I was going to get to that in the Easter eggs, but we could certainly get. I don't know. I guess it doesn't really count. Here's the thing that I want to say about that specifically is that there's a line that Fennec Shand has where she says, like, muscle can be bought if you know where to look. And as soon as she started saying that, I started saying out loud as we're watching it in the living room. My wife's next to me on the couch, and I started saying, Bossk, 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 Bossk. Please hire a Bossk. So I'm just like chanting this, and I'm not paying attention to anything else. That's just where my brain went. I just wanted them to cut to Bossk, and they're giving Bossk a stack of credits, and they're hiring him. So I did not notice the Mandalorian theme.
So what I've learned is Mike Celestino is the only Star Wars fan who is disappointed. The Mandalorian theme began.
So the credits are rolling, and Tori says, did they play? Was that the Mandalorian theme that they played at the end? I was like, what are you talking about? So I rewind it and I play it again. And I was like, oh, you're right. I feel so ashamed that I did not notice because I was chanting Bossk.
Okay, I love that. That is so good.
And I promised I would give her credit on the podcast, and now I have.
That is a fan.
Well, don't worry, because Kyle heard it for us, and I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. So I don't know what I was thinking, but I mean, I was definitely thinking Mando, but I did not pick up the musical cue.
Yeah, obviously they're telling us that they're going to bring in Din Djarin, so now I would not be surprised if that happens. But also, I really hope that I get my wish and they bring in the other bounty hunters that we're familiar with from The Empire Strikes Back, including Bossk, but also including Dengar, Forlom, Zuckuss, maybe IG-88. That would be awesome. I don't know. Why not? Let's bring them all in there. I would love to see them. Max says that he totally relates to this because he misses Marvel details all the time because he's rooting for something else to happen. Thanks, Mac. I appreciate it. Okay, let's talk about the cast. Returning from previous episodes. We've got Tamura Morrison as Boba Fett, Ming-Na Wen as Fennec Shan, Matt Berry as 8D8, Carrie Jones as Black Chrysanthemum, Jennifer Beals as Garza Fwip. Robert Rodriguez is back as the first role he played, Doc Strassi, the Trandoshan mob boss guy. Phil Lamar is back in a different role as a Klaatuinian boss, and Barry Lowen is back as Garfalaklox, the boss of the Aqualish mob that is at the table there. And then new or guest cast members, we really only had one, like I mentioned earlier, Stephen Thundercat Bruner. He is a songwriter, and he wrote a song for the Venom sequel, Let There Be Carnage. I had not heard of this guy before. Do you know, have you heard of him?
No, I haven't. Or at least I haven't sought anything out that he's done.
Rebecca,
I love that. No, I hadn't, but I love that the songwriter that feels like a friend, or it's like one of those things where, hey, you always wanted to do this, here's a chance.
Yeah, it's usually with these Jon Favreau shows, it's usually been comedians, and those guys I always like instantly recognize, like Brian Posehn was in The Mandalorian. I was like, oh, Brian Posehn. And then, Bill Burr or whatever. But when it's a musician, chances are I am not going to know them because I am not cool in that way at all. But he played the modifier tattoo artist guy. I could kind of tell that he wasn't an actor. He didn't seem like an actor to me, just based on his line readings. But it's cool when somebody like that gets a little cameo part like that. Okay, let's go through the Easter egg list. You have that ready to go there?
I do.
Rebecca? Awesome. So I know, again, we've talked about some of this stuff already, but we'll go through. So this jumped out at me, the Bantha bones, this Bantha skeleton that he rides past in the beginning. I had to wonder, is this the same skeleton that we saw Din Djarin ride past in the Tatooine desert? I don't know. It's kind of in the same configuration because it's laying on its side, but we're seeing it from like up close and at a lower, much closer angle. I don't know. Do you guys think it could be the same one?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
Yeah. But there's a lot of Banthas out there, so who knows?
Yeah, it didn't catch my attention, but when you put it in there, I was like, oh, I can see where you noticed that. Totally.
Yeah. Jabba's Garage, we already talked about that from Star Wars Battlefront video game. Mm-hmm. The Weequay guards, who I don't think we had seen before in the Book of Boba Fett, but they first showed up in Return of the Jedi. We saw one in The Mandalorian, and they've been all over. Hondo Ohnaka is a Weequay as well from Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff. The Three Moons of Tatooine, which I don't think we've seen in live action before, but I looked it up, and their names are Gomrasin, Guemersa, and Chanini. I don't know. I'm shrugging, but those are the names of the moons of Tatooine. There's two suns.
This is what I mean by Star Wars having too much homework.
But this is not something that anyone needs to know ever.
No, I know, but
I think
you could definitely understand what's going on in this episode without knowing the names of the moons.
I think there may be a brief glimpse of them in one of the prequels, but I'm not totally sure on
That's
that.
Totally possible. There's that scene in the nighttime when Anakin goes to raid the Tusken camp. That may be where they popped up. So we talked about how it overlaps with the Gunslinger episode of The Mandalorian. This is something I noticed in the shot in The Mandalorian where we see Boba Fett's boots approaching Fennec Shand in the desert there. You hear the spurs, and that's supposed to be a clue that it's Boba Fett. And that was a big thing people talked about when that episode first aired a couple years ago. And then there's a behind the scenes clip of Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni putting that sound effect in there, and they're like, Jon Favreau is like, you think people are going to make the connection and get that's supposed to be Boba Fett or whatever? But in this episode of Book of Boba Fett, when they repeated that shot, the spur sounds are not there. And I think that's because it's not the same boots that Boba Fett usually wears. But it's odd to me that that would be different. I guess it was supposed to be a little Easter egg back then. And now it's almost kind of like the absence of an Easter egg now.
I like that. We've got a new trend going.
And then kind of picking up from last week, I did not make this connection, and a lot of people did. And I just don't know about this history of this mod culture in the the mid-century British history. I remember that line in the Beatles movie Hard Day's Night where they say, "Are you a mod or a rocker?" And Ringo says, "I'm a mocker." But I didn't know what a mod was. And apparently it was this subculture of the British youth that used to ride around on these scooters. And they had all the mirrors and stuff like you have in the gang in Star Wars and Book of Boba Fett. So there you go. That's what this is supposed to be referencing. I had no idea. Did you guys know about that at all?
I did not.
Yeah, this is not something that I was aware of. There is some Arabesh writing above the entrance to the mod parlor. Best I could make out, it reads MERAPLA. I think it's part of a larger phrase that we can't see all of. I don't know. Based on that, do you guys have any guesses of what it could say?
I want to say that it's going to have a C and an E, so it's like something place, but that's what goes, just naturally in your head. But no, I have nothing specifically pops into my head that's familiar,
Okay. And then there's some graffiti next to it that says Umwelt, UMWELT. I'm guessing that's somebody's name, but I looked it up on Wikipedia and it's not something that exists already in Star Wars. So who knows?
Yeah, because it doesn't feel like an expletive, does it?
Right.
No, it's too hard to say.
But maybe an insult, like,
Yeah.
like an insulting phrase you would say to somebody. But yeah,
Right.
no, it doesn't feel like an expletive.
Boba Fett says that Fennec Shand is from the mid-rim of the galaxy, which is just another region, because we've seen the outer rim, that's where Tatooine is, and the mid-rim is the next one in, basically. Then you've got, the core is where Coruscant and Corellia are, stuff like that. So,
Rebecca.
What's that?
I said
more homework. Yeah.
Yes.
I loved that part of the Lego game trailer where they talk about, they have the galactic map of all the planets. I loved that. Looking at that, that was pretty neat.
So cool.
Boba Fett says sand people, which jumped out at me because usually they have been calling them Tusken Raiders, but they did call them sand people back in the original Star Wars film. And I always wondered, like, which one is the slur and which one is the thing that they prefer to be called? Or I guess they wouldn't even really have a preference in basic of what to be called because they have their own language or whatever. But there is the name Tusken Raiders. They have been called sand people. I don't know if either is preferred or not among that actual group.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, maybe you can, if you're comfortable enough around them, you can call them one thing or the other.
All right, this next one is the big elephant in the room. Boba Fett calls his ship his fire spray gunship. He does not call it the Slave One in this episode, but to my knowledge, to my memory, he has never called it that in live action. I don't think that name has been spoken in live action Star Wars. It has been called that on the packaging of many toys over the years and in a lot of Star Wars reference books and role-playing games and stuff. There's been a lot of conversation about this. I think conversation is a very polite way to put it because it's one of those things where a lot of people are angry and a lot of people are angry at the people who are angry. Now, I don't see what the big deal is really in the show because theoretically, I guess Fennec Shand might not know the name of Boba Fett's ship. So he says, let's go get my fire spray gunship out of the garage. Fire spray has been the name of the class of ship since 1989, somebody said. I saw a tweet go out that somebody was digging through their old West End Games Star Wars role-playing guide, and it said Slave One, fire spray gunship or whatever. So that's been canon for decades, literally. And I don't have a problem with him calling it by the more general name instead of the specific name. Now, people first started catching on to this when Lego took off, they used to put out a Lego set of the Slave One and it would say Slave One. Now it says Boba Fett's Starship. And people are wondering, like, why are they shying away from this name of the Slave One? Are they not allowed to use the word slave in Star Wars anymore? That would seem odd to me. I don't know if that's the case. People have also pointed out on the other side that if you go to the StarWars.com and look up the Slave One, it's still the name of the ship officially on the official StarWars.com website. Lucasfilm has said zero about this, nothing. So it's all like fan conjecture at this point. Do you guys have any opinion on this at all?
I mean, we've seen companies or yeah, like franchises try to retcon things or like change things up a little. It doesn't bother me one way or the other if they change the name, but also I don't feel that they need to change the name.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, yeah, I know there's negative. There's negative connotations with several words. So, and not just in Star Wars. So I don't think, because it's not a storyline. I don't know. Maybe I'm digging myself into a hole here.
Yeah, I would say like what we've seen so far in the actual content, the story, doesn't lead me to believe that the name of the ship has been changed. Because yes, they haven't said Slave One. He's just called it by the class.
Right.
But again, I don't think he's ever called it Slave One in the live action. So I don't think there's been a change. I don't know. I honestly don't know if there's been a change internally or whatever. I just kind of shrugged my shoulders at the whole thing. I don't know if it's going to come into play, if they're going to make a big deal about changing the name of the ship in the actual story and the content. But even if they don't or do, I don't know. I just kind of don't care, I guess. It's one of those arguments where like every side seems wrong to me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I can understand that, but I noticed it only because of the ongoing queries of the fan community. That line would have not really caught me off guard or anything, except for I know people are kind of looking to have that debate settled. Has it been renamed or not?
Yeah.
And so, but like you, this particular line, its context, its delivery did not, for me, settle that. That question for me is still unsettled. Is it or is it not the slave one in moniker?
Right. Yeah, and yeah, our friend Drew Taylor, who works for another website, asked Tamura Morrison this question in a Q&A, and Tamura said, "Yeah, we've been calling it the Fire Spray gunship," which is what it is. You know, it's like saying, "There's my land speeder" or whatever. And yeah, it has a specific name, but he just hasn't used it. I don't know. I guess the question is, or the answer is that I don't know. That's the only really way that I can come down on it, and remains to be seen. And it's probably not that big of a deal, no matter what. So we'll just move on from there. Bib Fortuna. Let's just go on to the next one. We'd seen Bib Fortuna. I hadn't mentioned him in the Easter eggs, but we did see a little bit of a flashback to him getting shot by Boba Fett in The Mandalorian. This one, the mapping drone that Fennec Shand uses to kind of map out Jabba's palace. Did you guys see this movie Prometheus? Ridley Scott film?
It's been a long time. Yes, I did see that.
There was this little device that does almost the exact same thing, and that's immediately what I thought of. Is more of a Alien franchise thing than a Star Wars thing. But that's what jumped out to me. She used the word Gotra to describe their little crime family, and that brought to mind this droid Gotra, which is something from the comics. This group that is for droid rights, basically. Doobie said it was a good spot to the Prometheus connection there. This droid right here that I've got the toy of, his name is EV-99, and he's the droid in Return of the Jedi. He says, "You are a protocol droid, are you not?" And the same model of droid is there working in the kitchen. We don't think it's the same droid because in the captions they call him the sous chef droid. So it may or may not be EV-99. Who knows? I have need for you on the Master's sail barge. What else we got? The cook droid was borrowed from Dex's Diner in Attack of the Clones.
Okay.
So up next we got the little frog that Grogu wants to eat in the Sanctuary episode of The Mandalorian. He pops out of the pot in the kitchen there. And then, this one, what I thought of was Raiders of the Lost Ark. So the chef droid comes out. He's got all the little cleavers and knives and stuff, and he's spinning his arms around. And everyone else who's a Star Wars fan thought of General Grievous. General Grievous did not even occur to me because I don't think about the prequels that much. But I thought of Raiders of the Lost Ark because there's that scene where the swordsman comes out in Cairo and he's spinning his sword around, and Indy just takes out his gun and shoots him. Best joke in the movie. And there's that similar scene here. The chef is spinning his knives, and Fennec Shand comes up and just cuts his throat from behind. That's immediately what I thought of. I would love to ask Favreau what he was intending to reference here, because I bet he's seen Raiders way more times than he's seen Revenge of the Sith. I don't know. Where do you guys fall on this?
No, I'm with you 100%.
Oh, it's so General Grievous. My mind immediately went to General Grievous, such that when I was reading through this list, I was like, oh, this is a clear indication of Mike's recent deep dive into the Lucasfilm collection, that he was looking at it more from the mind of Lucas and the mind of those great storytellers, as opposed to just the lore of Star Wars.
But I did watch Revenge of the Sith in that retrospective as well. Why I didn't think of General Grievous, I don't know. He has the 6 arms. He has the swords and stuff. Max says he also thought of Grievous.
You see this acted out even in the stunt show at Hollywood Studios. So, there's that like real world connection, even though it's just a stunt show.
Anyway.
But those are such great movie moments where there's like this tremendous setup of how dangerous this moment is going to be. And then just,
yes,
pull out a gun and take care of it. Or in this case, pop it behind and slice its head off.
So this droid, I had to look up its name. It's the LEP series service droid. It started out in the Clone Wars movie. That's the first place we ever saw it, and it popped up in a bunch of other episodes of that cartoon as well. This is the first time it's been in live action, and it's acting as the rat catcher droid here. So that was pretty fun. I liked him. Running around. Very funny to me. The Gonk droid. So people have pointed out, okay, I thought it was just called a Gonk droid. The one with 4 legs is apparently called like a Flonk droid or something like that. I had no idea. I didn't know there was a name for the 4-legged version of the Gonk droid. So my bad on that one. But yeah, he does make the same noise, the same Gonk noise as he walks around. And he's there in Jabba's garage when they're stealing the ship. There's also a skiff. Now, I watched Star Wars Explains Easter egg video this morning to see what I had missed. And he pointed out that in the expanded universe, Bib Fortuna had escaped Jabba's sail barge on a skiff, and that's how he got back to the palace. So he was thinking maybe this is supposed to be that skiff. I was just like, maybe it's like a spare skiff or whatever that they had in the garage there, but I think it could go either way. But there's one in the garage that the slave one knocks over when it's escaping from the palace there. Now Boba Fett talks about his armor being made out of Beskar, and that's why it wouldn't get dissolved in the Sarlacc pit. So that seems to make sense to me. The beak of the Sarlacc, when you go back and watch the original cut of Return of the Jedi, it's just that hole with the teeth. There's no beak like this. But then in 1997, for the special edition, they added this beak coming out. And now that's here in the Book of Boba Fett as well. And it comes out and tries to eat the ship. And that's where they drop the seismic charge. Benji's also wondering how long Boba Fett was in the Sarlacc, which is a discussion that we had earlier. Benji should have tuned in sooner.
We're still debating, Ben.
We talked about the seismic charge already. What else we got? Let's see. Wookiees and Trandoshans. We've covered that.
The picture isn't popping up of Yuzum.
Okay, yeah, this is one of my favorite Easter eggs in this episode, because when they're talking about the Major Domo, Boba Fett asks Fennec Shand if he's given her any information, and she says he's singing like a Yuzum, which I thought was great. It's a reference to this creature who was a background creature in Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi, and then in the special editions, there he is. So they made him into basically a singer in Max Rebo's band, the Max Rebo band, and he sings that song, Jedi Rocks, that everyone loves except me. I find that song incredibly irritating. I wish they hadn't changed the scene in Return of the Jedi. But
I have to say that I am on team wish the song wasn't there. So
yeah, Lapti Nek was a much better song. This really takes me out of the movie every time I watch it in the current cut or whatever. Max says he loves the info on the Wookiees and Trandoshans. It made the scene make so much more sense. Yeah, I actually was thinking about that. That wouldn't make any sense. You just think Chrysanthemum's just being a jerk and unhappy that people are having a good time in the casino, right?
You needed the info dump from Farsa to kind of, in the moment to give you the perspective of it, because it was until she kind of enlightened me a bit. I was with Bekah and like, he clearly doesn't like their success. I'm not sure why, but he's very upset. So
what I really like about all the Easter eggs in these shows, both Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, is that they're pulling from everywhere. Like they're pulling from all corners of the Star Wars, not even just the movies, but all the TV series, the Ewok movies, and the comics and the novels and stuff. It's fantastic. I think they're working very closely with, Dave Filoni obviously knows his stuff already. So you got that. But I think they're also working very closely with the Star Wars, the Lucasfilm story group, Pablo Hidalgo and Matt Martin, those guys.
Mike Mack says that his wife just watching us a few moments ago chimed in with, "I know nothing about Star Wars." Hey, stick around Mike Celestino for a little bit, and instantly you're so much more knowledgeable about the world of Star Wars. The little threads of data that he's able to pull from different universes blows my mind each week.
Well, this is how I've spent my life. It's very inapplicable in every other situation, and yet here I get paid to do it. So I guess
there you go.
It's a good reason to do
it. Garza Fwip talks about Chrysanthemum's years in the pit, which is a reference to the time he spent as a gladiator. You can read the Dr. Aphra comics for more about that. Doobie said, I won a contest. I did win a trivia contest on the Disney Cruise Line, and then I did win a trivia show on the Disney Trivia Live just a couple weekends ago. We talked about go ahead.
Just you won because you knew one of the names of Padme's handmaids. Is that correct?
Well, the way that they did the final round in that trivia show, I loved it because it was right up my alley. Because I think the thing I'm strongest at is knowing obscure characters' names. And the way the final round works is they had like 30 characters, and it's just a picture of the character. And they would just come up in rapid succession for like 5 seconds at a time. And you had to just name as many as you possibly could. And they started out like really obvious, like Darth Maul or something. And by the time they got to the end of the 30, it was like, I don't know, Logray of the Ewoks or Chief Chirpa or what was one of the good ones that I got? General Riken from Empire Strikes Back, the guy who's in head of the Rebel Alliance or whatever, like guys that nobody except the real dorks know. And each I think there were 3 people in the final round, maybe 2 or 3 people, and each contestant got their own group of characters. And I must have just lucked out because the other guys were very good too. There was some very stiff competition, I have to say, on that Star Wars cruise. But it was really one of my proudest moments. And I really wish that, my wife took a picture, but I wish she had taken a video of that, because I think the look on my face when I found out that I had done it, because after the round ended, I thought for sure I had lost because it was very close. But I think I won by like 2 or 3 or something. Oh, wow. And I was just so thrilled about it. Yeah, we've already talked about the arms getting ripped out of your socket thing there. The Godfather reference in the meeting of the 5 families. I actually just rewatched The Godfather recently, so this really stuck out to me. We've seen this scene in a bunch of different mob movies before, and I think Star Wars Explained pointed out that even the music in that scene in Book of Boba Fett is a little bit of a Godfather type score. And there's even a shot that I noticed, I put in my Easter egg list, where Boba Fett kind of goes like this, which is definitely a Marlon Brando thing. And Jon Favreau and all those guys are big movie fans, so I'm guessing this was a very intentional reference. And then we've what's that?
No, I totally agree with you. If you notice that the Marlon Brando, there's no
go back.
There's no way
that scene again. He just kind of goes like this.
Yeah, no, I have to look for that. There's no way that's accident. No way.
Mandalorian theme, Ludwig Göransson plays at the end there, and we've talked about that already. So it's a good. Each week I go in to make this Easter egg list, thinking like, oh, it's only going to be like a dozen this week, and I've been getting like 30 every week, which is crazy that they've crammed all this stuff in. And I'm not repeating anything. Like if something came up the week before, I'm not including that. So it's always like 30 new things that they haven't done before. So I just think that's incredibly cool. My question for you guys this week is: do you think the flashbacks are over? Because they said he's done with his Bekah treatment, and that's the device they've been using to send us into these flashback sequences. So what do you think? Do you think we're not going to get any more flashbacks, or we are going to get them, but they're going to do it in a different way? Bekah, Burbank, what do you think?
I think we're going to get them, and they'll be, like you said, different way or less frequently. Like it won't be so much a part of the story or like the whole story, but maybe fill in a few little gaps.
What about you, Rebecca?
I'm inclined to agree, especially with the comment that Shand made in regards to that. Because she talks about how, well, in essence, your outside scars may be done with the Bekah, but internal scars take longer to heal. And okay,
yeah, I want to see him like sitting down with a psychiatrist, and that's how that's how we're getting the rest of the flashbacks. Is Boba Fett's in therapy.
It's a weekly therapy.
With Daniel Logan coming back for that like in between part.
Yeah, that's always a possibility. I feel like that could happen. Rebecca, let's start with Bekah Burbank. What else are you expecting to see from the rest of the show, or hoping to see in the last 3 episodes here?
I'm definitely expecting Mando, and I think Bossk, like you said, I'm hopeful for you that this character shows up. It's probably obvious, but I would figure that there's going to be some showdown between the families and the Pikes, and maybe there'll be some Imperial forces because the Pikes have maybe money and power. I don't know, but I think the families are gonna show their support of Boba in some type of showdown.
Okay, what about you, Rebecca?
I'm very hopeful that Bossk appears. I'm hoping that he's Trandoshan, right? I've got this right. I'm working on this correctly.
Correct.
I'm hoping that this whole moment in the cantina is to kind of to set us up for the challenge that Boba will have with Wookiee and a Trandoshan on his team.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
So that's what I'm hoping. Just because but I have to say that there's part of me that wishes that like we had a Mike C webcam so that when that happens, because I just can't even imagine what the Celestino house will be like if Bossk makes an appearance in Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, Bossk has not been seen in live action since Return of the Jedi, where he had a very, very brief appearance in Jabba's palace. So I would be super, super psyched about that. He had a sizable role in the Clone Wars cartoon, but I never got into that too much. So I would be thrilled. I'd be extremely thrilled to see him pop up here. And yeah, for me, I just want to see those bounty hunters. That's really it. That's really the only big hope that I have left. I'm sure we're going to see Boba Fett ride that Rancor.
Mm-hmm.
They said that's like Chekhov's Rancor now. That's going to come into play in a big way, I think.
Is Cad Bane on the table? Timeline wise, I can never.
Yeah, well, we don't know. We don't know if Cad Bane is still alive at this point. Okay. So definitely possible. I know that he and Boba Fett are not or weren't on the best of terms. I think so. Again, I'm going to shrug my shoulders at that. But we will find out. Just 3 more episodes remaining of the Book of Boba Fett, and that's going to bring us. Unless you guys have anything else to say about this episode, number 4, The Gathering Storm. Either of you good to go?
I hope there's more. I hope the rest of the series feels like this because I've really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, me too. I think as long as we get, I just want to see some more locations too. I think that's big on my list.
He needs Boba to jump in that fire spray and go somewhere.
Yeah. Now you have the ship. Let's see.
You stole
Beggar's
that for a reason. Go somewhere.
Or go like hang out in Obi-Wan's house. Nobody's there. It's abandoned. Okay, that's going to bring us to the end of our discussion of Book of Boba Fett and to our final segment of Who's the Boss, called First Steps into a Larger World, where we talk about the media that we've been consuming and or enjoying outside of Star Wars. My example this week is a TV show called Peacemaker from writer-director James Gunn. It's a spinoff of the Suicide Squad movie, and I thought Peacemaker was extremely entertaining, very funny, a lot of action. It's a kind of a comedy action superhero show starring John Cena and a bunch of other great actors. Wonderful cast, very funny. James Gunn is such a terrific writer and director, and he just knows what he's doing. I really can't recommend it highly enough. It's definitely for adults. That's what I would say. If you're over the age of 17 or whatever, definitely check it out. What about you, Rebecca? Or let's start with Bekah Burbank first.
So not exactly something other people can completely enjoy, but I've been listening to my Spotify 2021 like playlist, that wrapped playlist that they present to you at the end of the year, and so they'll play some of it's songs from the artists that I listen to, and then there's been podcast selections. So I've heard some really cool podcasts with like John Foreman of Switchfoot and John Batiste, who did the music, the jazz selections for Soul, and then Lady Gaga and several others. So
Cool.
it's been very like eye-opening and cool to hear all these different artists talking about their work that I wouldn't have sought out on my own. So
Benji asked if I was going to share my thoughts on Fraggle Rock. That is one of the things that I've watched in the last week, but I was saving it, I think, until my interviews come out. Yeah, this is whole last week's been about Fraggle Rock to me, but I'll save that for another episode. Rebecca, mostly.
Dewey keeps trying to out that we're in the midst of a Melrose Place rewatch, but I refuse to talk about that. We actually gave the new ABC comedy Abbott Elementary a try. I enjoyed it. It is in the style of, the mockumentary, like we enjoyed with The Office, but it's set in a Philadelphia elementary school that is run by the principal has gained the job through the fact that she caught the person who's doing the hiring in kind of a questionable situation. So she ended up getting the job, and she clearly is not qualified to be the principal of the school. So you've got that, comedic element to it, but the staff itself, the variety of personalities that you have within this workforce, just doing their best on behalf of the students, but doing it in very different ways. You have the long time, long suffering teacher who's trying to mentor the wide-eyed, somewhat naive, let's just jump right in and we can fix everything if we have the right attitude and enough, energy. So I'm enjoying it. It's a lot of fun, really, really sweet. The cast, I'm falling in love with each one of them for different reasons. So yeah, Abbott Elementary, ABC. It's cute.
Okay.
Yeah,
great. I have to put that on my list. Going through some of the comments here. Justin Smith said Droopy McCool's whereabouts are unknown. That's another member of the Max Rebo band. And yeah, we haven't seen him pop up yet. So hope I don't know if we saw him on Jabba's sail barge, but if we did, I hope he survived. Mike Mack says Peacemaker has the best intro on TV. Yeah, I think I said in my tweet that it has the least skippable opening title sequence in TV history. Just incredibly fun and funny, choreographed dance number to 80s hair metal. So, the kind of thing James Gunn does, I would say. So, fun stuff. Check it out. I want to thank my guest for this week, Bekah Burbank. Thank you so much for, taking almost 2 hours out of your week to come and talk about Star Wars. We just had so much to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. And thank you to Rebecca Mosley as well for being here and running the tech and having some wonderful comments as well.
It was fun as always. Look forward to next week, Chapter 5.
Yeah, next week we'll be talking about the Book of Boba Fett, Chapter 5. So check that out. As always, please visit laughingplace.com for all your Disney news and opinions. My name is Mike Celestino. I am constantly, very frequently putting up Star Wars stuff at laughingplace.com. So go and check that out as well. Thank you out there for watching / listening, whichever way you're consuming this. And I will see / talk at you next week. Thanks again.